injuries, preventable injuries that he saw on the Camino. And so I asked him if he would make that presentation today, and we are very fortunate to have those skills. So, Scott Williams.
Scott Williams, trail name is Shroomer, and I've been hiking America's trails since I was a little kid. But I became a Triple Crown hiker over the past 5 years, which is the Appalachian Trail, Continental Divide, and the Pacific Crest Trail. And they're marvelous, absolutely. But while I was on the Appalachian Trail in 2014, Katie, my wife, called me at one point. Katie's never, we alternate between 1 year I hike a long trail, and the next year she picks everything we do. We're both retired. And she calls me while I'm on the AT and says, well, what do you think about doing the Camino next year? Now, we have been to some of these events, and we do a great mountain climber in Switzerland who had really talked to Katie about how doable it was. And I thought she was kidding. I said, don't joke with me like that. The AT is a really hard trail, and I was beat down by that one. And she says, no, I'm serious. Well, she spent the winter training, we all did, and we left last April, the end of last April, and we had the time of our lives. It was absolutely marvelous. I mean, I'm a wilderness hiker. I love America's. It's one of our greatest things that we've got there, is that we can hike thousands of miles in safety in wilderness in America. And nowhere else on earth can you do that. That's why people come from everywhere to hike here. Going to the Camino took a whole shift in mental, processing to do it. You trade wilderness for medieval villages and cathedrals and art, and you trade the solitude of the American hikes for hiking with the most interesting people that you've ever met. I mean, it's just fantastic. From everywhere. Hindus, Buddhists, every stripe of Christian, Jews. It's not just a Catholic pilgrimage. Lots of atheists, lots of agnostics. People out there with their own reason for walking. And almost everybody that we talk to, you meet a lot of people, are doing it for some personal reason, whether they're religious or non-religious. And whether they were Japanese, Buddhists, we met a number of young Japanese women. Everybody had their own reason for walking it. And that was so beautiful. I mean, that kind of spiritual aspect. But the other thing that is, it's the place where the physical and the spiritual really meet. I mean, we go to church, we walk in, or wherever you go, and you have an experience, but you sit, it's comfortable, you don't have, you're not beaten down by going to church. The Camino is hard. It's not easy. It's not easy to walk every day. And it's something most Americans, we just don't do in our regular lives. So the first message that I want to put out there is whenever you're hiking, whether it's this year, this spring, next spring, start walking now. Because we're not used to it physically. And most of the injuries that I saw were completely preventable. I mean, and all it took were people to get out and do a little prep beforehand. And learn to love walking, frankly. I mean, it's the most human exercise we have. We're built to be walkers. And if you do that, it will make you happy. I guarantee you. But what happens on the Camino, and actually before we get more into it, Emilio has, where are you? Emilio? Ah, there you are. Emilio does a class in Camino Spanish. And he has put together a list of Camino or Spanish body terms so that you can, actually go in and make some sense at an apothecary or whatever. So let's pass these around. And it's Camino vocabulary for the body. And while we're talking here, most of the overuse injuries that I saw on the Camino began the very first day out of Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. That's the hardest day that most everybody's going to hike on there, because later on when you get to the mountains in Galicia, your body's a little more, broken in. But to hit the Pyrenees the first day is really, it's quite something. I mean, I think it's only 17 miles. It's not much longer than some of the days you'll do later on. But it's a good steep climb. It's several thousand feet. And it is intense. And what people did, well, first of all, by not preparing, your ligaments and your tendons and your feet are just not ready for that kind of a push. And people would get out there and you feel great. It's your first day. You've been resting on the plane, resting on the trains getting there. and you suddenly hit it and you feel like you can fly. A lot of the young people did. I mean, they just flew up that thing, and 2 days later, I would meet them and they were hobbling, barely able to walk. And a week or two later, they're still hobbling, they're not doing well. And what happened is they just went way too fast, too hard, too quickly. And so the very first thing, if you can, is to, I mean, if you've got the time, go a little slower. Just figure, whatever you're training, it's different to walk 2 or 3 times a week than to walk every single day. That's a really different thing on your body. And so take it slow. Start out easy. And you've got one place, Keola, that is 5 miles in, and you've done a good bit of the climb of the Pyrenees. Keola and Orasan is the main one, and Keola is their little satellite house. And I think they can fit 35 people or something total, or maybe it's 40 between the 2 places. That's the only place over the Pyrenees that you can get to stop. But we did that, and actually we left Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port early. In the morning, we got to Keola, the little satellite place, by late morning. And we had the entire afternoon with nobody there, sitting on a little porch, looking out over the Pyrenees. It was so gorgeous, you can't believe it. And there's a private room there, but you have to rent it in advance. Rent Keola or Orasan, either one of those. Orasan does the dinners. It will break up that first day, and that first day is the most injury prone for pretty much everybody going over there. It's well worth doing. We met one gal, well then to get into the people that we met after that, who was a model. And we didn't find out for about 2 days of walking with her that she was gorgeous. She flies all over the world doing professional modeling. And she and her New York financier boyfriend were out there hiking with these gigantic packs. They're both very, very physical. They're both in shape. They had flown up the Pyrenees, and we met her about 5 days later, and she was barely able to walk. She was just crawling and hobbling. Well, Katie and I are older. We walk slower to begin with. And over the course of the hike, we had people slow down to walk with us for a while, and I would give them talks about how to get over their injuries. And I forget what her injury was, but there's basically, if you get an overuse injury, and a caveat right at the beginning, I'm not a doctor, so anything I say, take it with a huge grain of salt. Okay, up here, I am just a person who's walked a lot of miles, and I've dealt with a lot of injuries, but I am not somebody that's professional with any of this. So, take anything you hear with a grain of salt. If it doesn't make sense to you, don't do it. Hike your own hike is very, very appropriate for this trail. And whatever you do, whether you end up taking taxis or buses even, it's your hike, it's your experience, and it's marvelous. But anyway, this gal was barely able to walk. And what I told her, and what I tell anybody that's dealing with an overuse injury, which is an injury beyond, just if your muscles are sore, that's the way they're supposed to be when you start working out. Sore muscles is de rigueur. That is going to happen. An overuse injury is a persistent something that is hurting in your knee, or in your hip, or in your ankle, or somewhere that doesn't get better, and it keeps getting worse, and it will keep getting worse if you keep using it. So the first thing that a doctor will tell you is stop moving. Literally take a day off. If it gets bad enough, take a couple of days off if you can. But if you can't, you're in the middle of nowhere and you just have to keep walking, or you're on a schedule. What I have done for overuse injuries myself on the long trails is 3 things. You want to slow down your pace. Slow it down to the point where when you're walking, you don't feel that injury. And if you can't get to that, well, you're kind of on your own. You'll have to figure out whether you go to see a doctor for sure. But if you can get to the point where you can walk gently and not feel that injury, you're not injuring it as much as you would be going fast. So slow down your pace. Shorten the days. Don't go as far. And lighten your load. This model that we ended up hiking with must have had her boyfriend had a 65-pound pack. The thing was gigantic. It was huge. And she had a very big pack as well. And it was all of her modeling stuff. She had just flown back from a shoot in Florida. And she was going somewhere in Europe after that. And, they got rid of all of that stuff after a couple of days of walking with Katie and I on I saw them a week or two later on trail, and they were down to these little bitty packs. They were shuttling, there are places so you can shuttle your luggage forward, which makes it really doable. If you get to the point where you can't carry it, don't. Just shuttle it forward to the next albergue you want to go to. And anyway, they were having a ball. She'd gotten over it by slowing down, shortening the days, and lightening the load. And they made it all the way. Another one, who was the other? Oh, gosh, a young Australian guy, Marcus, wonderful guy, tremendously in beautiful physical shape. He had flown over the Pyrenees, and he was hobbling so bad when we met him he could hardly walk. And the same thing, slow down, shorten your days, lighten your load. Those three things are the keys to getting over an overuse injury if you're going to continue to walk. And it's your choice. I mean, if you do continue to walk, there's a good chance it'll get worse. I mean, but if you do those things, I've been able to get through stuff on trail without getting off trail.